There we
Number
go.
24. Is this number 20? 20.
I don't know how you remember each episode. I think you get it correct every time as well. I have no idea. I know it's in the 20s, but 24 sounds good. We can go with that.
Yeah. And yeah, we can always correct ourselves if it's not. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you're listening to us from. Yeah, back with episode 24 of us having a chat.
And what is the topic of chat today?
Well, something interesting as sparks this topic is I was sent a video of a chimp in a gi performing some acrobatics, let's say, on command from a human being, and kind of like the thought of animals, animal intellect, real animals, potential fake animals, and yeah, and everything in between. Yeah, so this is kind of slightly off the beaten track of governmental stuff and numerology, although to be fair, everything comes under that to some extent. Everything's related to everything, right, in this realm. But yeah, this is about yeah, wildlife, let's say. So
Well,
there's,
it is an
or is it?
interesting topic. You
Yeah.
just sparked my curiosity then with that last statement, just because I think recently something popped up. I mean, we've spoken before about how advanced the masking of people is now, and assuming they are even people, because the capacity to always goes two directions. Capacity is to clone a real human, whatever a real human is, and create an identical artificial form is one direction one could go, but also just kind of basic Mrs. Doubtfire, Robin Williams style, makeup to the point of having something that seems just like an actual person's face. And in fact, it's just not. And, a few days ago, I got linked on, I think it was like YouTube Shorts. This guy went out and just bought $1,000 off the shelf. One of those masks that you see, like, people doing pranks with in the streets. They dress up as old men when they're young guys and they do a backflip or whatever. So those masks now are so advanced, you can just buy them just from the shop for about $1,000 and it looks completely legit. This isn't military grade, this isn't anything like that. So when it comes to animals, it also can take those two directions. Number one is, are we natural? I mean, as all beings, what is this realm? But that's a big philosophical wormhole. And therefore, how do we discern the difference between what is real and what is not? Because it's one of those things where, like, if we are clones ourselves that have the capacity to reproduce, and then have the capacity to implement the creation of another clone without perhaps even the knowledge that we ourselves were clones hundreds, thousands of years back, potentially, then we're all the same. It's just one thing's being created at a later date, but it all falls under the same banner. And interestingly, that's what they depict in the movie Terminator. Terminator is a model. Like he's the same as what we are. And then as Terminator progresses as a sequel, etc., it's an advanced Arnold Schwarzenegger essentially. So it's the next grade. And I think it's also depicted in Will Smith's I, Robot. So yeah. With animals, same principle, perhaps.
See, it's funny that you mentioned Terminator because even like within just like Judgment Day Part 2, I'm pretty sure just within that one he develops emotion. Isn't there like a scene where like a single tear like kind of like drops down his eye or something? So, yeah, and we know that there's always symbology in these movies, and just from a actual scientific perspective, we've seen AI evolve within itself. We see that like it's crazy. I've got a friend that produces music, and he's been sending me songs that are made by AI. What the like? AI is rhyming. AI is using punchlines. AI is like it's yeah. So the capacity is definitely there. Us being clones, absolutely possible. And then it kind of like the philosophical wormhole is what is nature, then what is natural, whatever we deem as organic in this realm, for lack of a better reference point, I'd say yes, but on the grand scheme of things, it's, what is natural. This could all be an illusion. We know that atoms are essentially hollow. So we know that, that there's something, right? There's like a resonance that makes this real, or makes it solid, or makes it appear solid. You need to even think about the language that you're going to use when you're, phrasing these things down to the, extent of this existence. But back to the animals, there's this guy that's got a YouTube channel. I've forgotten, it's like it's not even a word. It's like a stream of like random letters, like RFJK, that I'm talking about. And he has an interesting theory that, lots of videos containing wild animals aren't legit. They're potential, masked animatronics, suits. Obviously, these things exist, but it's a matter of deciphering which ones are and which ones aren't. In regards to, I think this is very easy for our users to find. I think it's quite a viral video of like a chimp. It's like apparently it's a famous chimp from like Canada or North America or somewhere. And it's like doing these like spinning kicks, and like on like the pads. And looking at it, I'd say it's genuine. You feel differently.
I really should remember that guy's channel name. It's such a complicated name. But Yarify, whatever it's called, his channel. I can't remember his Christian name as well. It's got a really distinct Christian name. It's kind of like an old school turn of the century British name.
Like Jared or
no, it's way older than that. Like maybe even further than turn of the century. It's like, it's Hans. Sorry, it's not even English. It's German. Hans is his name. Right. Okay, so yeah, Hans has a set of ideas, and he's not always accurate because he says some crazy stuff from time to time that I've done, like just that we all do personally, or perhaps people that do slightly strange things in life do. And he's like, yeah, that's fake. Those people are all shills. I'm like, yeah, but I've done that. I'm not sure.
Yes.
But the most
occurrence for us,
for the most part, I do agree with him. And what he's essentially saying is he's saying that certain animals, period, are not real. And an example he gives is the silverback gorilla. And the silverback gorilla is a strange one because, well, firstly, this is going to go down two directions. I don't believe in the idea of the world. This is a bit complicated. Well, the world being objectively rediscovered, let's say, or discovered as they would call it, like turn of the century, like going into Africa and finding all these things that like didn't exist before, like no one had found them. That's just a consequence of the reset. And yet it's possible that people coming out of hibernation or born in the period of the resettling obviously are convinced that this world hasn't been found before, and all these civilizations are probably like ancient from millions of years ago, even though they probably just precede this set of individuals by like a couple of hundred years, a couple of decades, perhaps after the cataclysm, whatever that cataclysm may be. But anyway, the idea is that the silverbacks were discovered really recently in history. Like, it's ridiculous. And like the idea that you have all these massive animals roaming around forests in areas which were, according to the status quo, objectively also habitated, is that a word? Settled rather by local indigenous populations. And then, of course, at the time, a lot of Africa was already, according to the standardized narrative, kind of colonized, as they would say.
Yeah, of course, by Arabs, Europeans,
And actually, speaking of the Arabs, the exact area where the silverback gorillas were originally discovered, which is basically along the Rwanda-Congo border, was actually where one of the main slave trade kind of points were, which was originally supposedly governed by the Arabs, who were obviously coming from the east, so coming from like where the Gulf states are now across Ethiopia into that way. So just the idea that for all of this period, and it goes on for a really fucking long time, according to the narrative, which I don't believe, no one fucking discovered or, witnessed these giant fucking massive gorillas is just ludicrous. The whole thing is completely fucking ludicrous. And actually, like, even today, a video came up about what are those things called? They're like, it's like it's a indirect relation to the anteater in Amazonia. It looks a bit like a capybara, but with a slightly longer nose. And apparently, they just found a new species of this in the Amazon. I'm like, this isn't fucking small. This is the size of like a deer roaming around. The Amazon, I've been to the Amazon, there's nothing left of most of the Amazon, which is totally objective. I haven't obviously been to like everywhere in the Amazon, but most of the Amazon is completely destroyed. Like everywhere you go, there's no trees, nothing. It's just completely gone. It's actually worse than all the fucking videos about, blah, blah, blah. And there's someone everywhere. There's always someone everywhere, literally. There's always a person, whether it's like a missionary or a local indigenous person or someone working for a fucking lumber company. There's someone everywhere in the world now, and people are hunting shit and killing shit and all that kind of stuff. And we've got technology, we've got all this, and we've got the egos of people that work within the nature industry always want to discover the next new species, right? I think it's fucking bullshit. I think it's a part of the scheme. And the direction I wanted to go with this is what we find in every city in the world. We find zoos and we find Ferris wheels. And Ferris wheels, we can actually even talk about that. We'll do another video on it. Ferris wheels are a fucking energy harvesting scam. The idea of building something which is often shit, like the London Eye, it's fucking atrociously ugly. But, at least that's in London, and there's a kind of, logical reason as to why that would be constructed, because it's a moneymaker, right, for tourists. But you see Ferris wheels in the shittest places everywhere in the world, and there's no logical reason why you'd have that, because the expense of creating those things, they're not cheap to make. All the steel involved, the engineering, the technology, all the fucking applications, necessary for planning permission. It's just fucking bullshit. And no, they're not cost effective. I don't buy that they're cost effective. You've got X amount of money and you want to fucking invest in something. You're not going to build a fucking Ferris wheel on some shit town in Russia. I don't buy it. Anyway, zoos are the same shit for me. And so often you go to a zoo, as Hans would say, and there's just like nothing in the enclosure. And they're like, oh, sorry, yeah, this enclosure is currently empty, or we're cleaning it or replacing, or the animal can't be seen, it's hiding. Or why would you build a zoo for people and then you create enclosures where people can't even see the animals? And let's not pretend that it's for the welfare of the animal. It's a zoo. You're literally imprisoning and encaging an animal, so you don't care about its welfare. So then why would you allow the animals to go to a place where people can't see it? And if it's indeed a business, you would want to exploit that animal as much as possible, and you wouldn't want people being disappointed because they're not going to recommend your zoo, they're not going to come back, are they? So the idea of having all these empty enclosures and places where you can't see the animals, it's because that's when the fucking fursuit little dwarf men who are portraying these so-called chimpanzees or other creatures, or they're repainting the stripes on zebras. I don't think zebras are real either. I'm just going to put that there. I don't think zebras are real. I think zebras are horses. And indeed, of course, you can get hybrids, or you can get a fucking horse bangs a donkey, you get a mule. I'm not saying those things don't exist. I'm saying the stripes, which represent the duality of masonry, and it's always been a prominent mechanism of mockery, just like many other things. They get a form of a horse and then they paint it black and white, and that's really easy to do. Think of when you dye your hair with permanent dye; it will literally last a very, very long time, maybe 6-7 months. And that is just stuff that you can buy in the stores. So of course you can paint an animal, and again, they don't care about the welfare. So even if that thing fucking dies, who gives a shit? I don't buy that these things are real. And I'm not saying animals aren't real. I'm saying certain animals are not real. So the zebra might be a type of horse. Indeed, that's real, right? But doesn't naturally have stripes. And it's the same with chimpanzees. I think chimpanzees are little people in suits. I think they're little freaks in suits. I think they're people that couldn't get a job, or they're bred. Because if we are to believe that we are like essentially like the movie Alien with Sigourney Weaver, we were in little test tubes in so-called space, or in some fucking bunker where the world is being reset, and they're recreating a better version of the last model, like Terminator. They had to fuck up along the way because that's just the way humans are. That's the way anything happens. When you try and create, you make mistakes, and then you have all these little gremlins in test tubes, and that's why we have the movie Willow with little small people, because they're just a version of us that kind of failed along the way. And then they're kind of like, well, what do we do with them? And then we can utilize them because humans are very proactive. So, put them in chimpanzee suits and let them roam around. That's exactly what you see when you go to a zoo.
So, a couple of things that you said in regards to, that they said that, I don't know, gorillas were kind of discovered fairly recently. How recently, would you say that is?
The silverbacks, I think the silverbacks must have been like, if I'm guessing, I think it was like 1920s to 1940s.
Right.
Am I right? You've got it on Google, haven't you?
Right. Let's have a look.
Like the silverbacks, though, not gorillas, but silverbacks.
Okay. So 1847, they're saying it was scientifically classified, which is obviously post reset, in my opinion. But they're saying that the first reference to one was by Andrew Battle in 1625.
Right.
So, but let's just see who Andrew Battle is. Was an English traveller.
Actually, Hans touches on that. There's definitely a video where Hans touches on that, and I think it's bullshit as well. I think the guy, he looks into that guy from the 17th century, and it's just bullshit. But is that gorillas or silverbacks specifically?
I believe it's silverbacks, because I'm literally on the wiki. Let's have a look. Gorilla. No, actually, it's just gorilla. It's just gorilla.
Probably way more recently. That's But also the point with that is, who are these people in history? They literally just make shit up, and they're like, oh yeah, David Dastil from a Spanish conquistador in the jungles of Peru back in 1548. And everyone's like, yeah, that sounds cool. It's got some big words.
There's no evidence of this person living. There's no evidence of this person living whatsoever. There's no evidence of fucking Caesar living.
I agree, and I don't think most of these people are real anyway.
Yeah,
I honestly don't think they're real.
Yeah.
Or at least they take a character and they build them up. Just like Napoleon is like, in fact, prime example that we discussed in a previous podcast. Take Napoleon, right? They build this character up as this genius historical figure, right? And everyone's believed it for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then they make a Hollywood movie and they portray him as the exact opposite. And now people's perception of him is this fucking beta cuck whose wife was like fucking half of France, and he was just there like wanking in the corner. And that's actually what was portrayed in the Joaquin Phoenix's recent portrayal of Napoleon, the movie that came out recently. Again, that's how easy it is for them to manipulate history, which they do all the time. They change things and say, oh, that wasn't founded by a European, it was founded by someone from China or from Africa, or they make James Bond a black lady, or that's how easy it is to completely change anything within society. Any perception that society has can just be flicked at the switch and completely re-altered to become something else the next day. And history is no different. History has been manipulated since the dawn of time. And animals, zebras are not real.
Right. Okay. So let's move on. Oh, by the way, silverback gorillas were officially found in 1902. So you were close. Yeah. So onto the zebras, right? So I think zebras are real, and I'll tell you why. Surely there's video evidence of a zebra being born. I'm sure. I've never seen it, but I bet if I was to go, I'm surely I must have to find a video. Like, you can find dogs shitting on women's heads on YouTube, and that's completely allowed. But you can't say COVID-19 or flat Earth or anything like that. But yeah,
you just did.
I digress. But yeah, I'm sure that you can find it'll be born. You kind of see them through different stages of life. it's a very elaborate hoax if it is to have, you know, one or thousands of different, you know, animal hairdressers going and spraying these fantastically, you know, matte black stripes that don't come off and smudge with the rain, and you know, and stuff like that. You know, have to be really high quality dye as well for it not to smudge while it's dry, and you need to kind of protect them from the elements, you know, until, you know, the dye sets, I'd imagine. The fact that not one of these dyers have whistleblown, these potential, you know, hair artists, animal hair artists haven't whistleblown would make me think that that isn't the case, that
Contradicted
these
yourself.
animals exist. But has anybody ever, you know, painted a donkey, you know, and is there such as a fake zebra? That's absolutely possible, because it's like well within the realms of possibility, well within. I just believe that they exist based on, my deductive reasoning, essentially.
So you said the hoax, it would just seem to be too essentially complex to pull off. Mate,
No, it's
COVID,
possible. No, it's
COVID,
completely
the
possible.
hoax,
But
they pulled that off. World War One hoax, World War Two hoax, US Civil War hoax. They're all fake. They're all Ukraine, Russia. It's all just fake conflicts that they just spring out of thin air with some nonsense pretext. And you know, everything, all the food we consume, everything is fake. Things
so
that they
there's
tell us that are really good for us. Wheat is one example. Bread is a staple diet of civilization. I think bread is one of the most dangerous. I think wheat is probably one of the biggest.
just flour in
Yeah,
general,
it's
yeah.
pure poison.
And anything
Yeah,
that's, you know, not whole grain, because, you know, we know that there's benefits proven to fiber, but even then, not all fiber is equal, absolutely. And fiber irritates some people that have, you know, celiac disease and all these other things. Um, so, all
but it's
right, so
possible because it goes into who's involved, right? It's not about the complexity of what's being undertaken. It's about, do you have the numbers a lot? And I absolutely think they do. I think all around us every day, a huge proportion of society is complicit in the underworld, in the underrealm.
I think it's manipulation, and people are like, people just, a lot of people aren't that smart, you know, when it comes to certain things. Like, that's like a real thing. It's like people will fucking, you know, walk off the edge of a cliff like a lemon because they've been told that. That's literally. And there's a minority of us that will be like, hold on, fucking hell, I'm walking towards the edge of a cliff. No, I'm not. And you start fucking walking the other way. And everyone else carries on going the other way. And it amazes me, you know, it amazes me because obviously you kind of generally judge things by your own standards and people by your own standards. And, like, you know, you see people just doing absolutely fucking, you know, ridiculously silly things. It's like, you know, what the fuck, like, you know, we know, like, objectively. So if you're, let's just use, you know, your logic. If let's just say 51% of people are complicit, you know, knowingly, and then they know that their masters are essentially cunning, conniving fucking snakes. And then their master, but yet the majority of, you know, maybe 80% of the nation will go and get jabbed. You know, 80% of, like, the adults will go and get jabbed. It's like, people genuinely still believe in 2024 that governments have their best interests at heart, at least when it comes to, like, things like health and stuff. They might know, oh yeah, they're trying to tax us, all that fucking, you know, basic normie level stuff. But, you know, I don't think people actually understand that people want them sick, people want them dead, people want their fucking children, people want their adrenochrome, people want their energy to harvest. Like, that level, I think the majority of people are completely oblivious to, and people at best see things on like a socio-economic level. Um, so yeah, and I think, you know, and it's easy to manipulate people that aren't aware of the more grandiose aspects to our existence, or the deeper aspects to our existence. You know, those people who just control. So they say knowledge is power, literally. And the reason why you're able to live the lifestyle that you do, and, you know, we don't comply to certain things and are able to kind of navigate this realm, is due to knowing things, even knowing your rights when it comes to consumerism and finances and all of these things. Like, we use loopholes, and things that the majority of people don't use because they're not aware of them, or just on paper they would think it was wrong or illegal when it's, you know, completely not. Yeah, the difference between corporate law, common law, and all of these things, it's people are fucking idiots, man.
Hence why people are susceptible to believing that zebras are real. And then they're not. And there's so many. I mean, I'm trying to think of them off the top of my head, but
I
hands.
mean, we need evidence, because a theory is like, okay, we could say that, you know, I can say something, and this is what I mean, like they say things, but I'm just saying that, you know, if you see like lots of videos of a zebra being born, a zebra that's, you know, 6 months old, 3 months old, a month old, you can see the stripes developing. Is, you know, I think it's pretty, you know, to believe in that's quite normal, right? You know, with that level of evidence being presented.
It's definitely easy to do that. If you think of like bloody Hollywood, it's unlimited budget because money's not real. So if you want to create any illusion, you can create it. I mean, even the most basic.
But people live amongst zebras. Like people in Africa have definitely seen a zebra being born and would have seen.
Yeah, but
they live amongst them. And can they
real.
be trusted? Can the little fucking village chavs be trusted to like, keep fucking government secrets?
No, the village chavs in Africa are going to be comparable to the village chavs in any other part of the world. It's just the only thing that's different is the aesthetic and the environment. People are retired. Like, take the average chav in the UK, you tell them, oh my God, look, mate, Kate Moss is coming down the street, bruv. Look, there she is. Get a few people with cameras and fucking hoods and like a couple of big bouncers with tight shirts on. They're going, oh God, look at those guys. They're big. She must be a celebrity. Oh my God, yeah, there's Kate Moss. Don't even have to see her face. People like David Blaine have done that, Darren Brown. Everybody has played the psycho trick where you create the expected aesthetic and you tell people that it's true, and it's that mob mentality of if enough people are speaking it and you have enough things that represent truth, i.e. barbed wire, big bouncers, people with guns, the manager on the sidelines with a swanky gold watch, then, well, it must be real, because it's that kind of like logical deduction that people have when, you know, questioning truths is, well, what's the motive for it not being real? And people just can't seem to gather that what we're talking about, for understandable reasons, is, you know, there is a deep occultist mocking motive, which wouldn't seem logical to anyone else, because they're like, well, that costs money. Why would someone do that? What would they lose? They're not getting anything from it. Like, why would someone mock me? They don't know me. Like, it's kind of like, yeah, bruv, we just want to watch Spain versus France and spend £450 in random bets because we believe football's real, and we'll go to a pub and drink £200 worth of beer and like just talk about football. That's what most people are. They're fucking absolute chavs. And whether it's in Africa and it's like some tribal person, you know, that spent a year hand weaving their dress or their top, and, you know, we have this idea in one
they're more in tune with reality, generally speaking.
yeah,
like on
there's
just
also
anyone that lives on the land. Yeah.
Well, no, anyone that lives on the land has, you know, a better understanding, but not at the same time, maybe not. What I'm saying is it's relative. So, like, we look at these people as having a greater level of understanding because for sure they know how to use their hands and they do things which are traditionally associated with, I guess, kind of logical practice, which is, okay, well, if I put this needle in here, it creates a product, which is way the kind of that's the way the land works. You know, you take your hand and your strength and you get a tool and you know, put it on the soil and you can, you know, create tufts and you can grow arable crops and all that kind of stuff. But it's not really. People in those parts of the world are just as ignorant in a different way. There's a different level of ignorance, but the thing that binds people is the kind of psychological realities of you know, manipulation being, you know, kind of, you know, applicable to all. You know, you can manipulate someone if they've got a sai in their hand, or, you know, a spade, and they're living 1,000 kilometers from nowhere in the middle of the Saharan desert, just as much as you can manipulate a chav outside of Costa on a housing estate in Liverpool. Like, it's the same.
Yeah, in a different way, and you can look them for different things. Like, you know, obviously, you know, there's different mediums for. But
I would say the trick's the same. It's just the tools being used in the trick can just be slightly different. You know, you want to always approach the being with something that's related to them. And that's how you manipulate them, right? So, like, you know, a chav, you might have a packet of chicken nuggets, and the kind of guy in Africa wielding some kind of tool, something else, something that that's he or she is going to want, but it's going to be the same trick. the same trick for sure. Like you can take,
Yeah.
these people that go on YouTube do card tricks. They go to Africa or they go to, Brazil or they go anywhere, just a random street in New York, and they do the same card trick, and it's just as believable to all the people.
So the thing is, we say to all the people. Well, it's not to all the people because some people, like, literally, like, you sent me a magic trick the other day. The one with the guy that changed shirt in the laundry.
Oh yeah.
I literally saw first take how that was done. Like, the laundry bag beside him, the guy comes out. I mean, that's quite a basic trick. So he's using a clear shield with, like, the sheet that he folds, or whatever it is. That's the shield. The guy comes out from the back. I think they even showed, like, a little bit of the shadow of the guy. It wasn't that well done, but people with critical minds will see things, and, like, every single conspiracy that you just spoke of, when you talk about, Ukraine, World War One, COVID, like, all of these things have tons of evidence, because you can't pull the wool over everyone's eyes, and there's a good, solid 5 to 10% minority that probably, see through it. Thankfully, some of them are resourceful, and they put the information out there. But there is, like, nothing about zebras. I think that can prove that zebras do not exist. Like, there's nothing.
I don't know though.
However, is it possible to paint a zebra? Yeah, absolutely. Is it possible for to create, like, a fucking bogey looking bee that's crystallized in bogey that can fucking just implode and gas out, like, a whole city with the fucking toxic neurobioweapon it lets off? That's possible too. I just haven't seen it. I'm sure it's, is it possible? Anything could be possible, but I've not seen, like, the patent for it, or necessarily, like, the model of it or anything like that. But anything's possible, and everything, even down to this notion that we live on a fucking ball flying through space, doesn't, like, there's hard evidence to show that that is not the case. Hard evidence to show that nothing can leave this realm. And I just think that if there was, the fact that everyone's found information on everything else, I would suspect that we'd have information that would show that some of these prominent animals in the world are in fact fake. Can they be faked? Yes. Have they been faked? Have they been faked? I'd say yes too. Absolutely. We know absolutely you can get convincing gorilla suits and things like this. Absolutely. But does the animal itself exist? I'd also say yes. But can people pretend to be those things? Yes. But it's, in some cases it's just, like, tough. But yeah, I definitely important to look at that chimp, the karate chimp. Maybe if you Google that, that might help up, and just let us know what you think in the comments, because yeah, that one definitely had made me raise my eyebrow a little bit. I'll tell you that much. But I mean, as I said, you look at animals and animal intellect. There's this new, like, phenomena where dogs are getting hair bands and fucking knocking over cans, like, pulling them like bows and arrows, like they're really doing this. Like, people are fucking trying, like, it's crows that feed cats and dogs, and you can see them literally, like, winding them up like this. I think animal intellect's probably beyond what we think it is, and maybe they they operate in a different way sometimes, even to a point where I look at the way flies behave. Like, you see kind of, like, flies, you think, oh yeah, they're just, like, flying around randomly, like, but I'm sure there's a method to that. It's probably a method to everything that most of these. In fact, a lot of the time, nature makes more sense than us. We're complex recreational beings, whereas generally they're doing everything with a purpose. Usually, there are definitely animals that just like to fuck around like us too. But yeah.
Well, there's two points.
Go on.
First one is a unique angle, I guess, that we haven't touched on yet. But it's basic angle. It's like, well, why would they not create a fake animal? That's basically it. That's the question. So we've just acknowledged that.
Well, they have, haven't they? Dinosaurs.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's not even a question of, like, them being able to recreate an already existing animal form as a full mockery. If you're willing to do that, which they're pretty much willing to do everything, we know they imprison children, they chop them up, they drink their blood, all this kind of stuff. These people do anything for a thrill, and their mocking goes beyond imagination. Little quick side note, it always comes into my head. I feel like I've been indoctrinated with this, but I saw a video of John Wayne, who's that famous kind of cowboy figure from Hollywood. And he was a part of one of these weird Masonic clubs. I can't remember what this one was. It might have been the Kiwis, but it was one of their subsidiaries. And because they're all insane, they would, those little Arabic hats you get. It's actually Turkish, sorry. The little red hats with the, the ones I mean in Egypt and Turkey. They're like little red.
Yeah, little red, and they've got the little tassel on top.
Little tassel on, yeah. So as a part of their little club nights, they would get in go-karts, and they would all wear those red tasseled hats, and they would drive around the courtyard in their mansion just like screaming and like giggling, and they're all like 40, 50, 60-year-old men. Like, that's what these people get up to. These people are insane, which is why they have positions of authority, because insanity is definitely aligned to, I would say, well, a slightly higher intellectual capacity, which is why sociopaths, psychopaths have generally positions in authority, because they're willing to do more. They're willing to advance themselves more than the average normie that believes in COVID and eats fucking beef burgers from, so-called beef burgers from McDonald's. Whatever they can do, they will do. Whatever they can do, they will do. If they can do something, they're gonna, that's aligned to something that's genuinely real within this realm, then they're gonna create something that's not. And you just go the perfect example. People believe in, and how, dinosaurs. It's bullshit. There are no dinosaurs. They're all fake. And people out there that might be listening, with having not heard this kind of thing before, might be thinking this mad. If you actually do a little bit of research, sources that come from their end, not the kind of sources that I would use, not alternative sources, conspiratorial sources, their own sources. If you look at the people that supposedly discovered dinosaurs, i.e. the bones and the fragments and the fossils that are branded as true in museums today, the very same people, objectively by the very same museum sources, before they found those, often faked hundreds, if not thousands. So the same people that you've validated as kind of, as frauds, you've then taken later examples of their so-called findings and branded them as, real examples of dinosaur fossils, and then placed them in museums. The people that fucking, literally fraudulently try to pass off, fucking animal skulls and shit, it's like, real dinosaurs, days and weeks and months before. It's all fake. All these people are fake. It's just they have the authority to keep pushing lies and pushing lies until they get enough lobbying, enough leverage within their political sphere to eventually pass something off. That's how they eventually control and monopolize the world. And that's how they've organize themselves for generations. They get a few people into parliament. I'm sure that's how it started at one point. And then it expands and expands. It's a disease. It's a toxin. And then they end up dominating as they do, with 100% membership within all these positions like parliament or whatever. And the dinosaurs are one such example.
Back to what you said about John Wayne, he was part of the Order of Demolay. Just for those that are listening, he was a very proud Freemason from his teens, and no doubt he was groomed to become who he became, obviously. Yeah.
There we go. So dinosaurs.
Yeah, dinosaurs. So anyway, this organization that John's alluding to, they're actually called the Smithsonian Institute, and I recommend anyone to look into them, the history of them. Very shady Masonic regulatory body, of course, because you also be regulating histories. They essentially paint the historical narrative, and especially when it comes to wildlife and these things. But yeah, the whole paradigm of dinosaurs is provably untrue. They weren't mentioned in history before I think it was the 1840s. And if you look into history, you'll just find that, it's just so coincidental that that's just kind of before photography and all of these things. Anything before photographs were available, and photographs were probably available way before that, but anything before when they tell us the photographs were available, it's highly questionable. And yeah, it's, always post around what we would call reset time, which was maybe 250 years ago. Yeah, again, we've mentioned her name many times. Michelle Gibson has a plethora of information that's presented in quite a palatable way for people to review and understand why we've come to such conclusions. Are there any other channels that you would recommend for that kind of information, John?
Do you know, I do have my laptop up, but I'm hotspotting off my phone, so I turned off the hotspot just in case it interfered with this recording. So when I put on the spot, I can never ever remember. It's so crazy the amount of channels I go through. But basically now, which I think I've spoken about before, and I do really recommend this to people. And actually, we should touch on this in this video very quickly, without going on a tangent. And again, related to James's question about recommendations that might be similar to Michelle Gibson, etc. I've started to, or I did this about a year ago. I started to delete channels that I was either fond of, suspicious of, or that were just too negative. A multitude of reasons. There's only so many hours in the day, and I think it's unhealthy for the brain to constantly be, working overtime, especially when you see thinking about, I didn't watch that video. I really need to watch that tomorrow. You're kind of giving yourself extra stuff to do. So I would really just, boil your subscription list down to things that you really are interested in. I mean, I have channels that I don't subscribe to anymore that I really like. Prime example is GeoWizard guy that basically just does all these random geography tasks around the world. Don't subscribe to him anymore because I just don't have the time to watch that. And when it came to people like Michelle Gibson, John Levy is another example, used to subscribe to them. John Levy, I actually don't trust. And some of them, it's for that reason, but it's just so negative, like it's constant negativity. And actually, interestingly, little sideline, Silas's second to last video, he's just brought out a 5-hour video. He mentioned that he gets a lot of comments, in his subscription feed about how I had to unsubscribe from you, mate. You're very negative. And I feel like I've sounded the same a lot of the time, like especially when I'm doing bicycle vlogs at the moment. And usually I listen to my vlogs after just to make sure there's no errors, and then I think, fuck, you're just moaning constantly. I'm like, I just arrived in Turkey and the road's crap and glass on my bike and I'm tired. I mean, I don't sound like that, but everything I'm saying is kind of, I think it's better to balance your subscription lists out.
Agreed.
Are positive and unrelated, to the kind of political sphere. Because the political sphere is always going to be negative. That's the thing, and that's something that Silla said as well. He said he's not trying to be negative. That's just the reality. Everything is bullshit, and it's all just a lie. So how much positivity can you gain from that? You can spin it from time to time, which is good. Truth is power, and it's obviously great to know what is Fugazi. But of course, there's always going to be more of a negative light in the political sphere. So what I do is I balance it out with channels that are related to what we're talking about, but indirectly. So, for example, we know that food's poison. Everything that you buy in the supermarket to an extent is pre-approved by the status quo. So it's definitely not the best option out there for you. So I subscribe now to a lot of gardening channels. I've got 3 channels. One is called Seasonal Homesteader, I believe. It's called the Seasonal Homesteader. A great channel I would recommend people. This is honestly, you need to subscribe to this guy, David the Good. David the Good, he runs a little homestead. He talks about, he's got a great sense of humor as well, and he's a musician. And he basically, the channel is just about him growing his vegetables. He's a market gardener, which means that his job is he sells what he grows at little fairs and markets, etc. So David the Good, Seasonal Homesteader. I used to subscribe to that. You know them as well, James. Those the guy that dresses like he's a Mennonite or an Amish. He's got a big beard and they've got yeah. I don't subscribe to him anymore because he sometimes is a bit too negative. So, but people like that, if you balance out, your interest over different subgenres, it doesn't make it so repetitive and kind of depressing, if you like. So. That's my recommendations. I think if you go on, or at least if you go on my channel, I've got my subscription list is visible anyway, so if anyone wants to see it, like, you can just go and check that out. I don't think on this channel, JJ Talks, we're not subscribed to anything, so there's nothing to view. But yeah, basically that's what I would say. I mean, there are loads of channels. Like I say, people like John Levy. You might want to go and check them out. Like, that's just my opinion. I think they're shit. But then there's still going to be interesting stuff within there, and we all have different interests. You have things that we subscribe to more than others. So yeah, that'll be my answer.
John Levy, he goes more into like the geological aspects of it.
His focus is it's specifically the mud flood.
Yeah.
And the resets. I mean, resets.
Yeah. And to be fair, that's a very specific aspect of it, and that was ultimately what led me to look into things further. It's like, well, hold on, we have like these rocks, and these rocks are probably calcified this, and then yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's a good way to get into the nuts and bolts of the actual physical evidence. And then Michelle Gibson will probably help you look into like the more historical stuff. Yeah, and absolutely, like life's about being, holistic, eat well, think well, balance, in terms of, what you do, what you watch, what you read. Health. I subscribe to. In fact, in regards to, because a lot of us are kind of afflicted by our teeth in some way. A lot of us, think it's normal to get fillings and stuff, and we have a view of what we think cavities are and what healthy teeth are and how to look after teeth. But there's this really cool lady called Ellie Simpson, and she's like a long-term dentist. She kind of gives lots of let's just say alternative healthcare for your teeth. So yeah, she's someone I'd recommend subscribing to as well. For your well-being.
I'll add that. It was interesting you mentioned teeth. Didn't they used to use mercury in fillings, or did I imagine?
Oh, absolutely. They called them amalgam. And it's very funny because I went to the dentist the other day to have a filling replaced, which wasn't. I have no mercury in my mouth whatsoever. Which is like a composite filling. It's like some kind of like putty. It doesn't last as long as the mercury, but whatever. And typically, I said to the dentist, like what kind of fillings do you use? And she was like, she knew where I was coming from. She was like, oh yeah, she goes, oh yeah, I use mercury in mine. I'm thinking to myself, this is somebody who's like a healthcare professional that's, not even clearly doesn't care about health. And this is what we don't understand. It's that so many people that work in healthcare are unhealthy and don't care about health, like they're doing it because it's a job. They're doing it because it pays, okay. They're doing it for status sometimes. It's just like something cool to say, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm a nurse. And in some cases, they're just fucking clueless and they trust the system. It's like, I've been studying this thing for 5 years. It must mean something because I've been fucking, busting my ass to study it. It's hard. It's really hard. They use all these long words. It must be, and they're kind of like complicit in the lie. It's like a programmed bias that they have due to the fact that they've invested in this, and therefore it's something that they push on. And then on top of that, the people pay their bills, give them what they think is a good salary, whatever that may be. They probably get commission for the amount of fillings that they give people as well, and therefore they endorse themselves, or at least they fool themselves into thinking that these things are actually helpful. It's absolutely crazy. Like, we know things like root canals can actually, cause death. Like, root canals can be the root cause of lots of chronic illness. And there's, we're supposed to be positive, but negatives come from positives and positives come from negatives. And to looking into these things which are negative, you could prevent yourself from being on the receiving end of some of this thing that they call medical treatment. So,
yeah, no, exactly. Well, with the medical sector, is pretty kind of straightforward compartmentalization, isn't it? Whereby they the people at the top of the chain, and this is just like any company, of course, they're positioned there because they are actually, many of them are former CEOs or, high-end staff of pharma companies. And of course, they're given these positions in healthcare because they have experience working with pharma. But of course, they're lobbied into those positions because they're going to, sell as many drugs as possible to patients. The pharma's going to get their big cut, as we know with companies even selling a lot of medical equipment to the NHS, like Boots. It comes out eventually. Oh yeah, Boots was overcharged the government by like 800 million, all this kind of stuff. But it goes all the way down to the tiny nurse on the floor, because like if I'm the boss and I need to employ a departmental manager, I'm going to employ a departmental manager because I'm getting commission. I'm getting a massive cut. The more we sell, the more drugs we feed people, I'm making a massive cut from that. But of course, it's not me on the shop floor, so to speak, because it is a shop floor. That's the one responsible for actually issuing these substances. So I need to ensure that every person down the line that's employed has the same mentality as me, consciously or unconsciously. So I'm going to employ Darren, and Darren is on my wavelength, which is why I gave him the job. There's no like, I'm not giving the job to the person that's best for the job. I'm giving it to the person that's the shallowest individual that's sponsoring my set of values. And then Darren knows, what's going on the scene, and he's then going to employ a load of senior doctors that are, let's say, very fluid or very open with their prescriptions, people that are willing to just give a prescription for this, that, and the next, even though it's unnecessary. And then whether they're conscious or not, it's just a natural derivative. They're going to employ someone, for the most part, that's aligned to their perspective. So the junior doctor that's very nervous, very anxious. Oh, I need to give you a prescription for this, or you need to stay in here for an extra 10 days. And this is just constantly racking up the bills. And eventually they gain a vast majority that's aligned to the pharma companies, kind of set of stipulations, without actually openly having to say it, and without openly being conscious of the fact that they're doing it and they're sponsoring these big industries. It's all just a pyramid scheme, essentially. And that's the same with Freemasonry and all these kind of occultist subgroups, like the one we mentioned earlier with John Wayne. They don't have to know about the big conspiracy. It's just a big network. And so long as they're getting a little bit of the pie, so long as they're getting a slice of that cherry somewhere along the line, whether that's more money, whether that's free tickets to a nice, let's say, networking party at the end of each month in Mauritius, or a young
Epstein Island,
big house in an exclusive part. Everyone's got their, everyone sells out for different reasons. They don't have to actually know about the grand conspiracy. It's just, that's the genius of this pyramid scheme. It's all compartmentalized.
Yeah, all compartmentalized and self-fulfilling. Absolutely. It's like when you've got those like elaborate kind of like traps or like contraptions, should I say, set up, and it's also with a pea rolling out of a straw and hitting a penny, and then the penny knocks something else, and naturally, what's going to happen. It's like the penny's just been set up there, like you said, it's just a compartment, it's just a cog in this contraption. But essentially it will lead to that pea reaching the end. And you spoke about World War I and II earlier on. It's like, you create a climate where people are actually willing to, go to war. You create propaganda where people like believe that, whatever, the terrorists over there, they've took our land, or, whatever it may be. And people will be willing to go. And then on top of that, you've got sociopaths who want to do it because you create a society that produces these people. And a lot of it's self-perpetuating by design.
There we go. And I guess, speaking of the penny reaching the end, should we wrap it up?
Absolutely. I think we're pretty much on 54 minutes. That's a good amount of time. So hope you learned something today. I hope this has made you guys want to go and look into the topics that we've spoken about, and may you take positives from it ultimately.
Yeah, and I'll throw Pete Doherty's phrase back out there for the billionth time in the last 5 or so years since I learned it, and that's have a drink of a dance of a play. And just because things are seemingly negative doesn't mean they can't be spun in a positive fashion. So enjoy the day. Don't drink too much. Eat lots of spinach. And there we go.
Probably not spinach, kale. I think spinach is like a little bit of a shill veg. that's probably why it's like, you know, sold to us as like
That's
it
true. With
contains
the what's his name?
oxalates that in it's Popeye. Yeah,
Oh, shit.
yeah,
I eat lots of spinach. Right, yeah, no, and I just kind of contradicted my own ethos by believing
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, put it this way: there's worse things, but yeah, just, you know, eat good stuff, eat healthily. Yeah, do a bit of research. Even things like broccoli. Broccoli's also a hybrid, but, you know, once again, maybe we'll talk about food. Let's go down a little nature vine. Animals this week, maybe food next week.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, cool. We'll see you all on episode 25, and yeah, I guess food will be the main topic of discussion then. So, amongst other things, of course. But yeah, all the best, and I'll speak to you later, James.
All right, ciao for now. Adios.
What?